My name is Andrea Gonzalez, but I go by AA. I'm from the Philippines, but I currently live in Saudi Arabia, and I'm graduated recently, class of 2016. I ended up in Verde Valley, I guess by chance or like random. First it started out with one of my friends. She actually is a year ahead, so she's class of 2015. Her name's Emil, and she applied there and got in, and she went there. And I guess since I'm from the Philippines, but I live in Saudi, there's a lot of representatives. Jen Gill, I met her one of the admissions people. She was in a boarding school fair, so I guess through that, and my guidance counselor in Saudi kind of directed me to different boarding school options. So I didn't really initially know where to go for high school, but I guess knowing that someone went to VBS before me and learning about VBS gave me confidence, like, oh, this could be a good school. And I received really good scholarship amongst the other schools that I applied for boarding schools. So I felt that VBS was also similar to Saudi, since it was like desert, small school, and I guess that's what that's how I ended up in VBS. I think the Red Rocks, and I didn't visit VBS before, so my first impression was solely like based on like what I read about it or what I've been told. So when I first came, I was like, wow, like I see cathedral when I first landed. This is like that's the first time I've been to America too, so I didn't know what to expect. I didn't have any expectations, because I know a lot of people like, oh, thinking with the United States, like, oh, like LA, New York, but I just came and like, okay, I'm gonna do high school here, and with those Red Rocks, I just think like coming back, I'm like, oh, I can't own really white socks anymore because they get dirty. But I was really excited and really nervous when the first time one of my mom's friends was driving us to actual VBS campus, and I was like, oh, I saw the Morris field, the soccer field, and then from there it hit me, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna be away from home. So I think it was just like the realization, wow, I'm gonna move away, I'm gonna start a new journey, I'm gonna leave one of my elementary and middle schools that I've been for 6 years, so it was like a huge jump. I've never moved away for a huge span of time, so it's just something new, but really exciting, and also scary too. Yeah. I think it's, I guess, like the upbringing, and also like the what people like and don't like. I would have to say is like building character, and I feel like work jobs and dorm jobs like help that, because my mom especially, she really likes that you're able to train. So with VBS, when I tell my friends or people that haven't been to VBS or like know about it, and I describe what it is, it's not your typical school, but in the end of the day, like, I don't regret my decision. I really like spending my 3 years in high school in VBS, and I think it's just, I didn't realize it until after I left, like, wow, I got a lot of attributes, or like I learned things that I wouldn't know right from experience. And one of the key moments is just a lot of firsts, and it's like from my senior speech that I remember, like all the things that I wouldn't do if I ended up somewhere else. Like if I went back home to Philippines, I wouldn't have went camping, like I wouldn't have that outdoorsy impact on me. And it's just, I really like that, because looking back, I'm like, I wouldn't have never done this, I wouldn't have never backpacked or hiked, and I really like that, because it's something different, and that's not what I would usually do coming in. And I got a lot of training in being independent, because you're away from home, and then you do like your own laundry. Like you do have like people looking after you, like your advisors and stuff, but it's very different that you're trained at a young age, because you're able to carry those characteristics at a very young age and then develop it. Like for college, it was a way easier transition. Like I didn't have to worry as much about being homesick because I experienced that, so I can like bounce back and like being resilient with it. So it's just like all these different like factors that I wouldn't know going in, but looking back I'm like, oh, thank you, like, oh, a good thing I did this, or like, oh, don't worry guys, like VBS, it's like, I would say it's also rustic too. So going to Austin as a city, I'm like very blessed, like, oh, very fortunate. I have like warm, like, I don't know how to describe it, but it's just like living in the dorms very different than living in like the residence halls. Like it's kind of like an upgrade. So it's just like, wow, like I'm so fortunate and very lucky. But I'm also lucky too that I was able to experience a topsy-turvy side of things, just to like realize how lucky that I'm able to go to school here, go on a different journey than what my family has done, because I'm the first person to study abroad and not like do the, I guess, stereotypical path, like go to high school here, go to the same school as where my grandparents went to, like that. So it's just a combination of things which I didn't think about until now. So yeah. The first one was with Lee Carter, Jeff Perkins, and Chris Warren, Anasazi and Hopi. So what we did was, well, first we went kind of like around the Southwest, like the four corner states. I remember going to Colorado a bit, like camping in the middle of nowhere, and then going to Utah, but mostly spending like about a week in the Hopi reservation. So it was really nice because I actually took anthropology Southwest peoples with Lee. So I learned about Hopi and Navajo, and then I actually got to go to where they live. So it's like nice because I have a little background information and going in without knowing about them. And it was just some place that I've never actually know I would end up, and it was really nice, like helping them and seeing like the difference between and learning their history too. That was my first year. It was also, I guess, difficult because everything was on my first time. There's like me and Josie, we were only two girls and everyone were guys. And after that, it was first time camping. It was so cold. I remember being bundled up and I'm like, I can't take this. And it wasn't that cold because I experienced colder in my next ones. And I guess this is my second one in junior year. It's my favorite field trip because, I don't know, like, I guess it's the factor of knowing what to go in with field trips. Like I had already previous experience and I liked my group. And we went to California. It was with Andy Gill and Natalie Pluger. And we went to Channel Islands, Santa Barbara, Ventura. So we did like mostly beach and coastal. And I really liked that because I got to know the people in the field trip, and I got really close with Tatiana because we were we shared a tent. We're like tent buddies for the week, and that was the first time I backpacked. I was like, I'm hiking 11 miles, I think, in the dark. It was scary and hard, but I enjoyed like the challenge because that backpack was really heavy and it was dark. And then my the headlamp? It like didn't work, so like half the time it was really dark and I had to rely on someone's light. But that was so much fun. And then senior year I was with Claire Brislin and Mike Spielman, and we did On the Road, and that was a totally different field trip because it wasn't planned structuredly. Like they purposely wanted it to be spontaneous, so we're on the road and we did a bunch of stuff that weren't like, it wasn't itinerary based, like, oh, on the first day people are gonna cook and then we're gonna go at this site. Like it was mostly a surprise, like, what are we gonna do, Claire? We'll see. And then I'm like, what? Like I need to know what to wear or like what to do. And that was when I saw snow again, and it was really nice because it was during the field trip was when I got to go to different states, and I got to see more of what's outside of Arizona, so I really like that. And lastly, my favorite part I think was the hot springs. It was in New Mexico, Gila Hot Springs, because it was really cold, but like the hot springs were like, they're like, I guess like one of the highlights. There were way more, but that was fun too. And getting out of the snow, like that was like when the weather was all crazy for the field trips. So like I remember with Canyon de Chelly, the tents broke, and then we had to like drive out like in the middle of the morning so we won't get stuck when the snow was happening in New Mexico. But I really enjoyed it. people tend to not like being outside, but I learned to love it thanks to VBS, so I really enjoyed field trips. Yeah. Meeting the different people from different countries, like even though I came from an international school, like this is way more international because everyone's from a different place and being different is normal kind of thing, because coming here to St. Edward's in Austin, like a lot of people are just local or like from Texas, so I lose that and I miss that community, like international stuff. But I think the memories that I remember, right now I can think of like work jobs. Like my first year I had different work jobs and everyone's like, oh, barn, like people don't tend to not like that because you scoop the horse poop, but I had actually fun. But it was just like, that's one story I'm like, oh, like things, I think the common anecdotes that I have are like memories that I'm like, oh, like that was horrible, but looking back that was funny. So it was like, oh, like scooping the poop, like it wasn't fun as much, but I did with friends, so like we tried to make the most out of it. Or like the crazy adventures. I think most of the stories come from field trips and our high school traditions. Think of like fire run, mud pit, what else? Clue finding. So like all these things that make VBS really unique, because when you go somewhere else, they don't exist. Like there's just this like VBS like world, or like it's very special because you won't find like mud pit somewhere else, or like, ew, you jump into the mud full of like water and stuff. But I find that fun. Like it made me, again, like VBS made me like adventure, like things I wouldn't do, things that I guess people like from the city, they're not used to like that kind of lifestyle, I guess, because I meet people who are like, oh, you do that, like, oh, I won't never camp, like those. It's just all those memories. And I think being in the dorms, it's like just the spontaneous, like, oh, it's past check-in, I should probably go back to my room now because lights out soon. But then there's people hanging out in the common room, so then we talk. So it's kind of, that is still happening now, because in my residence hall we still have that. We have like a common area, so I like that, like where you make new friends, or like you get to know people more just by being in the same place as them. And I think the different, I wouldn't know, but like all my 3 years in Arizona and VBS, I was able to actually explore most, or like almost all of the cities or state, like from the very southern tip of Arizona, thanks to field trips, and then to like the very north, because when I went to Antelope Canyon with Pete, so it's like very north or south, and like it's just all the fun field trips and like weekend trips that we go to. So I think just any story that I enjoyed, I really like to relive it kind of by telling people. So yeah. There's so many, but I think Claire, because the first time I arrived, I remember it was raining, and then she was the first person that helped me with my suitcase. So it was kind of like my arrival to VBS. The rain was kind of like a blessing, because the same thing happened when I came here to St. Edward's. It started raining when my dad was driving from Houston to Austin, and let's see. Oh yeah, she was my dorm parent for the first year because I lived in Sears North, and I think I always saw her, like I had her for classes, but I always, because I joined cross country and then trail running and like all these like the different extracurriculars, I always got to see her and I got to know her more. Like she's not just a teacher, but also like a friend and someone that I can like talk to. There are way more too, but like that's the first person that I popped out of my head. So. My first year and sophomore year, I really liked hanging out in like Sears South Common Room because of like TV, or like it was just really comfy, and like that kind of was like my space where I did homework or like you can socialize. For junior and senior year, I lived in motel, so like the quad area in front, that was really nice too, and like a really good day when it wasn't like cold. Like when it was sunny, it was nice out, that would be nice too. I don't go here often, but like the chapel is really nice because you can see like you're looking down, and then I really like, I forgot what it's called. I think it's Cathedral too, right? Looking out, yeah. I miss looking at the view before. I'm like, oh, seeing like the same thing all over, but coming here and seeing a different view, I miss like looking at the cathedral, all the red rocks, and like the nature, because all I see is like skyline, buildings, very different. I think the advice to like, let's see how old I was. I think I was 14 when I first moved away. I think looking back is just, there's some things like first is how to like behave, I guess, like confrontation. There's some skills that I got over the years just like with living with people. Like I think I would tell like my old self like, okay, you're living with roommates, you're living with people. It's like I only learned what to deal with that just from experience. So all the things that I learned just from experience, because you can tell people like what to do, but they won't necessarily understand or like get it or like empathize. But I would tell like, oh, this is what you would do for these situations. I think that's one thing, because that being away from home was hard, but even harder was living with people that were not like different, or like you have to learn how to compromise, because in the last 2 years I had my own room, but then you're still like sharing things. So like that's one thing. And then I think the second advice would be like, you can do the IB program, because that was really hard. There's some times where I was like, I can't survive this, or like I'm done, like IB exams, no, like it was just hard. But looking back, I'm like, oh, I was able to finish it, because it's a long 2-year like teachers program, and then you have like almost a month of like exams and just so many demands, plus on top of that it's like extracurriculars and stuff. So it's like you're gonna survive, I guess, or like you can do it, that kind of advice, because I didn't know I would be able to survive that, but here I am. And I think the third one would be, since I'm away from home, it's like everyone else is pretty much on the same boat in a different level, and I would say like you have people there to support you and be there for you in times of like trouble. So just maybe tell my old self like reach out, like don't be afraid, because like there's a lot of resources that I was able to take advantage of, like talking to teachers or like asking advice, because they're older, not necessarily like wiser, but they might have gone through the same or similar path, so they would be able to help me, or like just talking it out. And then just, I don't know, like just learn to have fun. Don't be like too, I guess, like academics. Like I learned that you only experience high school like once unless you go back, but it's just enjoy the time that you have there with people. So I think that's it. Maybe there might be more, but that's it for now. Yeah.